Our video today is centered around the billionaire Thomas Kaplan, whose rapid rise to wealth through insightful investments has made him famous. We are going to dive deep into what made Kaplan's wallet so fat and how you can do the same. Stick around for the whole video because we will be covering lucrative asset classes, investing strategies, and mindsets for cultivating wealth. If you are on a journey towards financial independence, these tips are for you. Thomas Kaplan is not a fluke. He just made the right choices. This overview could help you make the right choices for your own situation. Without further ado, let's dig in. Thomas Kaplan was a bright young mind and he never let it go to waste. He grew up in New York and as a young man attended Oxford University. Thomas would go on to land not only a bachelor's and a master's degree in history, but a doctorate degree as well. He had an affinity for the natural world, particularly conservation and art. As a fun side note, Kaplan and his wife were owners of one of the largest collections of Dutch Golden Age paintings, particularly the artist Rembrandt's work. He once bought a painting from a Rembrandt series for $5 million. So, how did Thomas Kaplan make his billions? What was the secret that allowed him to purchase art for millions? Kaplan's journey towards full-stocked coffers began when he was still in his 20s. He realized that he was particularly interested in commodities and began to research the markets for good opportunities. With very little expertise, he stuck to his guns and decided that silver was going to go up. Around that time, this wasn't a very popular idea. In his latest interview with David Rubenstein, the billionaire shared his beginning bets.
We're starting your own company, but what expertise did you have to start your own company in the business world?
I had no expertise.
Okay.
And there was really no reason to give me any backing. Fortunately, my first foray was in silver in 1993. And the zeitgeist was that silver was going to go down to $2 because digital film would supplant silver halide. I believed that people got the analysis wrong and that silver had a better chance of going back to 50. So I put my money on silver options. And silver went from $3.50 to $5.50 in relatively short order. And I made enough money to decide that I didn't want to do that anymore, but I would take all that money and put that on buying an option on a silver property.
This encapsulates two powerful secrets into one decision. For starters, Thomas completed what's called due diligence. In other words, he did his homework. When everyone was throwing shades towards silver, he was studying the fundamentals to find evidence of an opportunity. Secondly, Kaplan trusted his research and stuck to his guns. He didn't let the emotional pull of other analysts' comments distract him. There are voices all over the web that have differing opinions on any and every financial move you could ever make. He didn't waste time comparing opinions. He spent his time learning and then doing. This goes to show that your focus is better spent on educating yourself and learning the basics and fundamentals needed to make your own analyses. Many investors new to markets will spend all their time eating up the content thrown to the masses by gurus and armchair analysts. While in the beginning, it can be useful to see the opinions of other people who understand what's actually going on. As soon as you get your own grasp of the situation, it's better to stop listening to 1,000 different voices. If you can learn the ins and outs of the market and the moves that you wish to make, you can spend your time and focus on making sure that your strategy is airtight. Knowing your options is also necessary. Yes, that pun was completely intended. We mean options in the general sense of knowing what tools you have at your disposal, but actual commodity options happen to be one of those tools. An option is essentially a bet placed on the value of something going up or down. Buying silver options allowed Thomas Kaplan to generate larger returns than simply purchasing the commodity itself. Okay, let's back up a second. He found some good plays that made him rich enough to start buying properties. Where did this money originally come from? We'll let him explain.
Well, let me make sure I understand. Where did you get the money to buy the options?
I started with $10,000.
Okay.
So I had, a little bit of savings and turned that into hundreds of thousands of dollars and then put the money on a property in Idaho. And I realized around that time that I really didn't have very much competition. And so I took whatever money I had and I went to Peru and Bolivia and Mexico and I would put down options on these properties. After a certain period of time, I found that I had as interesting a portfolio of option properties as any existing silver company.
Much like anyone who wasn't born with a trust fund, Kaplan had to build up his first thousands the old-fashioned way, working hard. He didn't expect to make bank by trading hundreds of bucks. He was also at a time in his life when he could afford to put a good chunk of his savings on the line. Once the ball began to roll, he kept rolling it. Kaplan used his profits to fund his next play and his next. As he began to get a better grasp on the workings of the silver industry, he realized that instead of directly betting on the value of silver, he could instead place options on the properties and businesses themselves.
I found that it suited my aptitudes to take that money and buy assets and hold those assets. Having a historical bent allowed me to see the market through the prism of history. And so when you see these cycles and you understand human psychology and fear and greed, the history gives you a great perspective. And so if you own the assets and you don't go into debt, it really becomes a function of time before you become fashionable again. And we made a huge discovery in Bolivia, and that's where the fortune originated.
Thomas laid it out plain as day. He used the money that he was accumulating to begin picking up assets. As his portfolio of mining locations grew, so did his ability to buy more. This is one of the most effective strategies that the rich and wealthy use to store and build wealth. Assets often retain their value, especially when you consider longer time frames. Assets is quite the blanket term. Everything from real estate properties to precious minerals to digital currencies can be considered assets. By definition, an asset is something that holds value. Take cryptocurrency, for example. Technically, it isn't legal tender in the United States. Despite that, people are going crazy buying up these digital coins because of the value they hold. If you want to know more about crypto specifically as an asset, we highly recommend you check out our video on yet another billionaire investor, Michael Saylor, and his thoughts on why crypto is an even better asset than physical property. Now, back to the focus of this video, Thomas Kaplan. You might be wondering if he rode the silver train into the sunset, making all his money from that precious metal. You would be mistaken. Kaplan knew that his strength lay in his research skills and understanding of markets. For this reason, he began to branch out into other commodity assets.
So why did you get out? Usually people, when they make money in something, they say, you know, I'm smarter than everybody else. I'm going to stay in this and keep doing it. It's like going to Las Vegas and gambling.
I retired from the silver company when it came time to build it. I said, look, I can't even program my VCR to build the biggest mine in the history of Bolivia. You've got the wrong guy. Let me go. And so they said I could. And so I went into platinum and got lucky and went into hydrocarbons in the early 2000s. And that's where we had our biggest score, actually, in East Texas.
And what did you know about oil and gas?
Nothing.
Nothing.
But that was already a very good pedigree in terms of what had happened previously.
As you can see, Kaplan's lack of industry knowledge didn't scare him away from searching for opportunities. That being said, you can bet all your cash on the fact that he was doing as much due diligence as possible. If this is your money, you need to be sure that it's a good move. Luckily, there are a lot of shared principles between different industries and markets. As you get a firmer grasp on these, it becomes easier to notice opportunities in other realms. Kaplan continued to jump from commodity to commodity, buying assets left and right, both in the commodities themselves and the properties that generated them. The year is now 2022, and Thomas Kaplan is no longer running around searching out hot commodities. He resides as the chairman of the Electrum Group, an investing and asset management firm. He also holds the position of chief investing officer. Nowadays, Thomas's own commodity assets largely consist of gold. Maybe that's another lesson. Stick to what you know best. So now we have a roadmap of billionaire investor Thomas Kaplan's journey to wealth. Let's recap the strategies and tools he used along the way. Number 1, due diligence. If you hate studying and researching, you're going to have a tough time with this one. Thomas Kaplan proved that you don't always need to adhere to popular opinions. In fact, the thing you can depend on most is your own knowledge. That is, of course, if you've been working on educating yourself. We aren't here to discourage you from listening to the smartest people in the room, but we also aren't here to tell you that you can't figure it out on your own. Some of the best opportunities are discovered where others don't care to look. Complete your due diligence, and then remember number 2. Number 2 is stick to your strategy. While everyone was afraid that silver was on its way out, Thomas did his homework and stuck to his guns. In a way, you aren't necessarily battling the opinions of others when you come up with a strategy. What you are actually fighting is your own internal disagreements. While finance is made of pure numbers, it has an underlying current of emotions that affect each and every move made by investors around the world. To think you are above this is naive. None of us are. This means being resilient with your emotions and making decisions based solely on logic is necessary for success. Number 3, using your options. This is a double whammy. Just like we mentioned earlier in the video, the word option has 2 meanings here. The first is the regular use of the word. You have plenty of options at your disposal to create wealth for yourself. Whether this is buying commodities, collecting crypto, purchasing stock, or something else, it's worth knowing what you have available. The second use of the word options is much more specific. If you buy an option on a stock, you are agreeing to purchase the stock itself at a certain price. For example, you agree to buy it for $5 and someone else agrees to sell it to you for $5. They think it's going to go down to $2 and want to get a good deal. Well, imagine the profit you could make when it goes to $10 and you just bought it for half the price. We don't recommend purchasing options until you fully understand them and the risk they entail. If that stock goes to $2 and you're obligated to buy it for $5, that could mean trouble. Number 4, buying assets. We've talked a lot about assets today. Naturally, we're capping off this video by going over them one more time. Assets are essentially stores of value. Consider what sort of things increase in value over time. It's not always possible to predict the future accurately, but by examining history, you can pick out patterns in the price of assets. For example, the housing market appears to go through cycles. Even though houses can sometimes be worth much, much less than originally bought for, that doesn't mean they aren't primed to go back up even higher. As you begin to accumulate some wealth of your own, take the time to research the different types of asset classes and find the ones that feel right for you. If you enjoy this channel and have learned anything from it, please offer your support by liking and subscribing. It helps us to continue bringing you high quality content that both educates and entertains. Once again, thank you and see you next time.